So what is an iconic player? It may not be the best player on the field, it may not be the one that scores the most goals, or the one that wins the most championships. An icon is a player that we remember, a player that makes us feel things, a player that we associate with a moment in time and just comes to represent something bigger than themselves. So who are the 5 most iconic players in the history of the U.S. men's national team? What's up, guys? My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report, the show we talk about U.S. men's soccer. And today we are talking about the 5 most iconic players in the history of the U.S. men's national team. And I couldn't just do this by myself. I teamed up with Drew from Kicking It with Drew SC, and this is actually the second video in a 2-part series. The first video is over on Drew's channel. If you want to see that, I'll put a link in the description. In that video, we both nominated 5 players as well as some at-large bids to find out who were the 5 most iconic players in the U.S. men's national team history. In this video, which you're about to watch, we narrowed that down, we debate it out, we throw a bunch of names on the table and try to hammer it down. Who are the 5 most iconic players ever? And like I said, these are not the best players, these are not our favorite players, and some of these I have a feeling you're gonna disagree with. So check out the video, let me know what you think in the comment section, and make sure you check out the first video on Drew's channel, and make sure you go subscribe to Drew's channel because he puts out awesome content. All right, guys, me and Drew just figured out our list for the 5 most iconic U.S. men's national team players of all time. We had a bunch of guys that were the same, but we also had a few that were different, so we're gonna try to figure out if we can come up with a conclusive list right now. As it stands, our list of most iconic national team players ever are as follows: Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, Freddy Adu, Jermaine Jones, Carlos Bocanegra, Tim Howard, Alexi Lawless, and Christian Pulisic. Drew, let's start with you. Who do you think it should be the first name on the list? End of story, no discussion. He's just iconic.
End of story, no discussion. Obviously, I have to make this easier. Landon Donovan. Easy choice right here. Number 1 name on the team. Number 1 name on anybody's all-time best USA players list is Landon Donovan. I feel like you can't really make an argument to keep him out of it. He's the main guy.
The only argument you could make is, you know, he did take that sabbatical. He did have that fight with Clemson. Clemson.
Yeah.
He did kind of foil out in Europe, you know, and it didn't always feel like he was completely invested.
Yeah, you're right. That's the only thing that really was bad about him.
Yes. However, as you said, I mean, probably the greatest American that's ever played up to this point. Probably the most iconic moment in the history of the national team with that goal against Algeria, tied for the most goals of all time. Over 150 caps for him. I mean,
also leading assist maker for USA as well by like a long shot,
a mile. Yeah, I mean this.
You can't have him not on this list,
despite how he critics, but yeah, he's gonna be there. Yeah. All right, so agreed. So we got one guy. So we got Landon Donovan. Number 2, and this is a guy that neither of us had on our list, but I just don't know how. Clint Dempsey. I mean, just about everything we just said about Landon Donovan is true for Clint Dempsey, except that he always brought it. There was no sabbatical. Every time he was called up, he was in the game. Every time he was in a game, you felt his presence, his emotion, his energy.
Mm-hmm. Always. I love that about Clint Dempsey. He gave it everything he had every time. And we talked about before, at the end of his career, he scored most of his goals to catch up to Donovan's, leading goal scorer. They're tied now. And until then, I can't wait to see who replaces them as the top leading goal scorers. But until then, he's number 2 as the most iconic player for USA.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting, man, because we've had this big year-long layoff because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
I mean, Josie Altidore was on pace to do it, but he just missed so many games to injury. But Christian Pulisic's already off to a pretty good start. But anyway, we have 2 guys, so I think it's going to start really getting interesting now.
Yeah, I think that's no arguments too from anybody. There shouldn't be, at least. Donovan and Dempsey, both well-deserved.
So for you, who is number 3 on the list?
Oh, man. I have to go with Tim Howard as number 3 for me. I know maybe Brad Friedel or Casey Keller even, but I think Tim Howard, 42 shutouts, iconic performance against Belgium in the World Cup. I think the best performance of all time by any goalkeeper from any nation in that quarterfinal, scenario. But Tim Howard, I think, to me, Definitely our number one goalkeeper of all time, and really deserves to be on this most iconic list. How
Yeah,
about you?
121 caps. I mean, he was just the guy for so long. Just kept us in so many games. I mean, the question is probably going to be raised. Like, we've got Dempsey, Donovan, and Howard. Are we a little bit biased to that segment
That
of the
generation.
national team, or were those guys just really that much more iconic than the guys in the past?
I think they were. I think some of them, most of them, actually all three of them performed better than everyone else in the past. I mean, you got the two leading goal scorers for the USA. You
Hmm.
got obviously not the most shutouts. Casey Keller has the most shutouts. I think it's 47. But Tim Howard, nonetheless, I think put in better performances than of anybody national team stage level. So
Yeah, I really can't argue with you. I had Tim Howard on my list. I think he's a lock. Now, I think for 4 and 5, it's
it
going to
gets
be really
interesting
interesting.
here.
I really thought
Yeah.
that those three guys were going to be absolute locks, but I think like the rest of them are
Now
going
we
to be.
gotta debate these last two.
I think number 4 we might both agree with as well, because I think that the fourth guy who deserves to be there is Alexi Lawless.
Yes.
I
Everyone's gonna be like, "What? I hate this guy. I want Alexi Lawless on here," but
I
he
know, and
cannot have. He has to be. He's iconic. You hate him right now because he's iconic. He's
there's
still
probably
around.
a lot of younger guys who are watching this who maybe not have seen Alexi whenever he was a player, maybe only know him as a broadcaster, or I
Yeah.
don't know, or just maybe don't know like just how far soccer has come in this country and how much people like Alexi Lawless should be credited for helping the sport grow so much.
Yeah. Even to this day, he's still out there grinding for the USA. You're trying to get support. Everyone to support the U.S. national team. Like, regardless of his unpopular opinions to some people, I think he's still iconic for the USA. Like we
Yeah,
talked about before, that red goatee, that red hair, that denim
that
jersey.
denim jersey, man.
You
I
think
know.
about denim jersey, you picture Alexi Lawless. You look it up. He's one of the only guys you see wearing that stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned you look it up. I do like a lot of eBay shopping, as you could tell back here. And whenever you eBay U.S. men's national team or U.S. soccer, you're inevitably going to come across something Alexi Lawless. I think
Yeah,
for a lot of the world, up to this current generation, Alexi Lawless was like that guy that represented American soccer.
definitely. So that's four. We got one, two, three, four. Now we got the fifth one. It gets even
Dude,
more interesting. We thought you guys thought four was crazy. Let's see what happens with five.
you got to make this pick right here. We got some interesting names left on the list. We got Freddy Adu, Jermaine Jones, Carlos Bocanegra, and Christian Pulisic.
I feel like they're each iconic in their own way for certain reasons. But look, I don't care. Who cares? I have to go with number five. I have to go with Freddie Udo. Okay, I have. Iconic, but not in the best way. Iconic in like a bad sense. I know, but iconic nonetheless. Like we said, thinking about overhyping players, still a thing. Still gets compared to Freddie Adu. Grant Wall making a podcast series on the Freddie Adu story because that story is still to this day interesting to a lot of soccer and just regular sports fans who back then knew who he was because he was the youngest person to ever sign a professional sports contract at 14 years old. The next Pele, the American Pele, this guy was the definition of overhyped. This is why we get called out for overhyping our players because of Freddie Adu.
So
How do
you
you feel
picking
about that?
Freddie Adu over Christian Pulisic?
I know, I know, but like you told me earlier in my video on my channel, you said Pulisic has not done a lot for the national team, correct?
Correct. He doesn't have any iconic moments, but really neither does Freddie Adu.
No, except just being like a flop.
And we're going with Freddie Adu over Jermaine Jones, who scored that amazing goal, who also kind of represents dual internationals, who also had that Snow
I knew this was
Classico
gonna
game.
happen.
Ooh, that's
The
tough.
time of
And then
year,
Carlos
Dempsey,
Bocanegra,
probably the best defender we ever had.
Kobe Jones, most cap player of all time.
All right, let me hear your number five. Who would you pick? Let's compare and contrast.
I think Jermaine Jones. I think that if you talk about the story of the U.S. men's national team, the dual internationals, especially currently, is just such a big part of it. I mean, up and down the roster, there's so many dual internationals, and then for his
Yeah,
specific era, the German Americans was just such a big part of that
staple.
particular
Yeah,
national team.
I
And
agree.
Jermaine Jones came in as like this huge personality. His figuring out where he played next to Michael Bradley was just like the story of that era. Another
Yeah.
player like Clint Dempsey that just brought it 1,000% every game. He has the big moments. He played in the World Cups. I mean, he did so much.
Yeah,
That's
he
that's
he was good. He was a good guy to have. He was a freaking tank engine in midfield. He was always
yeah.
running, always trying to get in the fight, always making that tackle.
But I'm gonna
Yeah,
be honest, man. I think the guy's Freddy Adu. I think it's Freddy Adu. I really
absolutely. I
do.
mean, you show two names here to like anybody, a common sports fan, just a common regular American soccer fan. You pick one, and they immediately know more about Freddie Adu, I feel like, than they do Jermaine Jones.
And we're not talking about the best player or the player that did the most for the national team. We're
Yeah,
talking about the most iconic player. And
iconic, most recognizable, basically. Like,
for
yeah.
yeah, for fans around the world that maybe don't know as much about the U.S. men's national team as we do, or for just general sports fans that don't know that much about soccer,
Mhm.
Freddie Adu's still the guy.
Something
And
that's something they know.
not necessarily
You know?
for good reasons, but it's just part of the
Exactly.
story. Like, can
It's
you
part of
tell
the
this?
history of
Yeah,
USA soccer. You know, that's he's embedded in that history forever. You know, if anyone we overhype, like if Pulisic turns out to be a huge flop, he'll compare to Freddie Adu more than anybody else.
I think he's a little bit past that, man. I don't think he's going
Well,
to be a
yeah, I
flop,
mean,
but
that was just an example. He's way past almost everyone on this list.
absolutely, yeah. Freddie Adu is his name probably comes up in every youth academy
Yeah.
in the United States of America, because his story is just to this day he's probably the most hyped up American soccer player that ever
Oh,
lives.
definitely. He was like the guy. He was the golden boy before like everybody else. You know.
So I think that's our list right now. But I think another interesting thing that's going to happen is in the next few years, we're going to get Gold Cups and World Cups and stuff like that. And this current crop of players is going to be making iconic moments.
Yep.
And we're going to be having guys like Weston McKennie and Christian
Gio
Pulisic,
Reyna,
Gio Reyna. I
who are
mean,
already making big names for themselves right now. Like this is gonna elevate even more. We've been like stripped away of all our USA, national team games this year, but 2021 is gonna give us a lot of games to talk about, a lot of
yeah.
games.
So I'll say this. I'll say Freddie Adu, you got a spot right now. But as soon as another World Cup comes through and Christian Pulisic does something amazing, or Weston McKennie does a scissor kick goal, or just whatever happens,
He's gone.
I think he's gone. Yeah, I think
He's
that's where
gone.
where we're at right now.
But I feel good about our list. I think these five players. I look at them and I think USA soccer. I think of USA national team. I think of all the history this brings to our soccer nation.
Yeah, I think that whenever I thought about it, these were kind of the five names that came to my mind. So I know that we're going to get a lot of hate in the comments section. Bring it on. I want to hear everybody else's
That's all
list.
right. It helps your channel get passed around YouTube anyway. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where we're going to end it for right now. Drew, this was so much fun, man, talking about
dude, it
soccer
was a
with
lot
you.
of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This is really cool.
Yeah, man.
Everybody, please go to Drew's channel, support him, see the first part of this video. Please comment in the comment section what you guys thought about this discussion. If you want to see more of this type of thing in the future, who your five guys are, why we're idiots for picking Freddy Adu over somebody else, and just your thoughts on everything.